Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to call this December 2nd reorganization meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Appreciate everybody coming out on this rainy evening. We have no executive session report by way of attendance. All board members are present. So we'll move into public comment on agenda items. So just so everyone is aware, this meeting is a little different. For the next few minutes, we'll have our annual legally mandated reorganization meeting where we'll elect a president and vice president for the coming year. And then we'll adjourn that meeting and go into a regularly scheduled board meeting. So the only public comment right now is for agenda items, which is the election of a temporary president, a president, and a vice president. So is there any public comment on agenda items? Nope. It's a first. All right. We will now move into the election of a temporary president to preside over the election of a new president per Section 405. May I have a nomination for temporary president? Brenda?
I nominate Greg Pelicano.
Is there a second to that? Second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? Greg Pelicano is elected temporary president and will now preside over the election of the president. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Ex-President. Do I get to change chairs now or anything?
You got a gavel.
That's okay. So the first order of business we would like to take on here is ask for nominations for the role of president. Would someone like to make a nomination for the role of president? Brenda? Do I have a second for the nomination of president?
Wait a minute. She didn't say it yet.
I'm sorry?
I nominate Christian Nascimento.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Peter, thank you. I'll now ask for a motion to close the nomination for president.
Yes, for other nominations.
Oh, is there any other nominations first? I'm sorry. Before I close? Sorry, my first time doing this. Any other nominations? No? If not, I'll ask for a recommendation or a nomination to close. Anybody? Kim? Second? Motion? Peter? Thanks. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we have one nomination on the table. And with that, the nomination of Christian Nascimento of president for the next year. All in favor? Any opposed? No? All right, Christian will take over as president again for a term of 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will now ask for a nomination for vice president. Will someone please make a nomination for the office of vice president? Kathleen?
I would like to nominate Mrs. Brenda Hackett.
Is there a second? Second. Motion is second. Is there any other nominations? May I have a motion to close nominations? Kim, is there a second? Peter? All those in favor of closing the nominations? We have one nomination on the table. With the nomination of Brenda Hackett as vice president, I will now call for an election. All those in favor? Opposed? Brenda Hackett will take over as vice president for a term of 1 year. Congratulations. This brings us to the completion of the reorg meeting, but I wanted to take a couple of minutes of personal privilege if I could. Last year, I think the board had been through a challenging and difficult time, and when I took over as president last year, I didn't have a chance to kind of go through what I thought my vision would be for how the board would operate. So I actually had prepared a couple slides tonight on how we might move forward. So I'll ask the board to take seats up in front and give me a couple minutes to review a couple items. What do I push? So I asked the public and the board to bear with me. Coming from the corporate world, I tend to rely on PowerPoint a little bit. So I put a couple slides together just to kind of outline how I thought we might move forward this coming year. So as an introduction, I think the board is very happy and pleased with the heritage and the culture in the district. At the same time, we recognize that there are significant challenges that we face both in the near term and the long term. And with that in mind, we're instituting some changes in the board committee structure and how the board operates, which I hope will bring focus, attention, and constructive improvement to the district operations. As I said, I think the board has come a long way in the past year, in the past several months. We're working well together as a team, and hopefully what I outline here will help us work even better. So, reorganization. I took a look at this, how we were currently structured, and I thought best to reorganize based around the board goals that we've previously adopted and the district areas of focus, meaning that the board ought to be organized along the same way that we have the district focused. So first item, I believe, is we need to strengthen the committee structure. What does that mean? Increase the number of committees that we have, and in some cases, increase the number of members on each committee. Adding a vice chairman, I think this will help from a governance standpoint. This way we can set board meetings, and if the chairman can't make it, we can continue on and we know who's going to run the meeting. Also proposing making the president an ex officio member of each committee that will enable whoever the president is at the time to help craft the recommendations that go to the general board. And then we'll continue to appoint ad hoc committees and task force as necessary. And one thing that I'd like to do is increase public participation on those committees and task forces as appropriate. So eliminating the work session. So for the past several years, the board has been meeting as a board twice a month. First in a work session on the third Tuesday, and then in a full board meeting on the fourth Tuesday. So I propose we eliminate the third week meeting, so eliminate the work session, and do the majority of that work in committee. So we'll have more committees, they'll be more robust, the issues will be vetted through the committee before coming to the board in our general board meeting. This will allow for a more comprehensive proposal to the full board and more time for board members to participate in those discussions before bringing it to the full board for ratification. Meaning presentations that would come before the board in a work session will go before the finance committee or the property committee. The chairman then at the general board meeting will make a recommendation. That recommendation may be to move forward. That recommendation may be for the entire board to look at something. But I feel like if we strengthen the committee structure, if we all trust each other to do our jobs, we'll be able to work through some of these items in a better manner. So committees. So for the past year, we've operating with these three general committees: finance, strategic financial management, audit, budget, probably the most important committee that the board has. Property, dealing with all areas of property and facilities planning, critical area when you look at the environment our students are in and what we're planning to do with the fields. And then policy, the group that looks at board policies and continues to do yeoman's work in recommending changes and adjustments to board policies. We've recently added a fourth committee, communications and community relations. I think we've heard the public loud and clear that we need to communicate better with them. There's things that we do that we need to make the public more aware, and this group is going to be focused on that. So to this structure, I propose adding two more committees: an education committee, which will take curriculum, extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, diversity, wellness, safety, all those items, consolidate that into one board committee, and have folks that will be focused on assisting the district and the administrators looking at those areas. I don't propose to say that we're experts in education. We hire folks to do that, but I think that we can provide guidance and we can provide support in looking at the number of courses that we have, the types of things that we're doing. And then human relations and personnel. Personnel matters, obviously, critical area for the district. This committee would focus on that, focus on things like meet and discuss with MAO and working with MEA around contract areas. So the committee structure, I would appoint Greg Pelicano as finance chair, Jim Phillips as property chair, Kim Woodring as policy chair, Peter McFarland continue on as communications and community relations chair, Brenda to take over education chair and Herb to take over as HR chair. As you can see, I've added a vice chairman to each committee so that, again, if the chairman is not able to make a meeting, we can continue on with someone that's well-versed in the areas. And one thing I'd like to do is involve our student representatives in committee meetings to the extent possible and appropriate. I think we have great students here. They come, they participate well, and I think the more that we can involve them in the working of the committee, I think the better the committee work will be. And all the way to the right, in working with Dr. Zerby, outlined the staff members that we feel would probably be appropriate to work closely with those committees. So if we're going to eliminate a work schedule, I think we have the work session, I think we need to have a strong schedule. I think the committee meetings need to be scheduled to build up to the monthly meeting. That is, presentations occur in committee, work occurs in committee, that feeds into the board meeting on the fourth Tuesday. So propose a structure like this. And if you think about it, you know, in week 1, the education committee meets, maybe there's a policy issue that comes out of that, which during week 2 is addressed. Also in week 2, property committee meets, you know, obviously there's going to be a financial impact to that, which can be then brought in front of the finance committee in week 3. I highlighted dates and times, so week 3 would be in place of the work session. So I don't mean to say that there would be less meetings for board members. In fact, in this case, there very well may be more meetings for board members. So replacing the work session with an HR and personnel committee meeting, and then a finance committee meeting. You know, one of my big concerns and complaints for the past year is that we just tend to get rushed when it comes to finance committee. And so by scheduling finance committee in the evening and a night that's absent of board meeting, we can spend time and take 2 hours or the amount of time needed to go through and thoroughly vet those issues. All of which leads to week 4, the monthly board meeting. Having it at 7 p.m., not having any committee meetings in front of it would give us time if we needed to meet in executive session to handle any appropriate executive session items. And then the cycle happens again. From the board meeting, there obviously will be things that would go back to the committee, to the the communications committee, and then on and on. So thinking about how the board committees are structured brings me to what I call Methacton 2020. And I think this is a good time now, as we enter into 2015, to think about where we want the district to be over the next 5 years. And as the class of 2020 starts to matriculate through and gets ready to come into Methacton, we really need to think about where we want this district to be. So really what this is a 2015 strategic plan and comprehensive plan where we can coalesce all the outstanding documents and ideas, our board goals, the superintendent entry plan, the comprehensive planning items that the administration is putting together for the Commonwealth per law, into one cohesive strategy for the future. It's basically saying where we want Methacton to be in the next 5 years and what's our plan to get there. This would be worked on by the relevant stakeholders, the board obviously, the administration, staff, teachers, the public. We're going to invite and engage members of the public to participate in this process. And again, the students. The students have a vested interest in where this district and where this high school is going, and we want to make sure they're involved and engaged. And we'll engage a third party to help facilitate. One thing that I've done as I've worked through this and thought through this is I've talked to other boards and other board presidents from districts in the area that I consider high performing, TE, Radnor, Lower Marion, and we're getting names from folks that have worked with them on their strategic and comprehensive plans. And again, key is multiple opportunities for public feedback and engagement. So the thought would be to kick off in early 2015 with a report to be delivered in probably the summer of 2015. So I did sketch out a schedule. This is definitely draft, but kind of the thinking would be that we'll spend the next couple of weeks identifying the steering committee. This will be a group of, again, board staff, public citizens, and students. We'll appoint them by the end of this year. And then in January 2015, that group will look at the consultants that we've identified, make a recommendation to the board on a consultant to use. At the end of January, hold a kickoff meeting, and then working sessions over the next 3 or 4 or 5 months to complete in May or June of 2015, giving us a public comment period on what's been worked on, bringing it back to the board for adoption in September 2015 or in August of 2015. And all those dates, obviously, subject to change, really once we get a consultant in to advise us on that, we'll adjust that accordingly. But this is kind of my vision of what we ought to do as we work through our strategic and comprehensive planning. So there's no actions we need to take at this point. I think there are things that will need to be addressed in policy that we'll work through as of due course. But I just wanted to share kind of my thoughts for what we wanted to do over the next couple of weeks, months, and years. So with that, I'll invite the board back to seats. If there's any questions, we can go through that. Otherwise, we'll adjourn and go into our regular meeting. Thank you. So again, no action taken on that at this time, but I thought it was important for the community to see what we were thinking about. So any questions or comments before we adjourn? Kim and then Jim.
Yeah, I really like the whole idea, the concept going forward. I think it will help us organize. I think it will help us focus, just all the things that you had laid out. I guess my one question is, when we look at the liaisons that we had, they probably all neatly fit into that schematic somewhere. So am I guess, presumptuous to guess that maybe home and school would fall under education? Have we thought through that?
I'll just tell you the truth. I ran out of time, so I hadn't got to those yet. But maybe stay tuned.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I do think they do fall into that schematic. I mean, we will have liaisons. Obviously, you and Jim continue on at the VOTEC. Jim's still in his term at the IU, and then we have home and school liaisons. We have legislative, and we have the township liaisons that we still need to address.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Jim.
Yes, just one other. As far as having all these committees, as far as the advertisement, as far as the notes, minutes, where the Sunshine Law affects us, and making sure that our committee members understand what is potentially a violation, whether it's through email, et cetera, and maybe Frank can just give us a little cap on that.
Well, that's a good point. So it's important for the public to know that those 6 committees that we outlined, I mean, they're board committees, so they're covered by Sunshine Law. So all those meetings will be public meetings that the community will be able to attend and have an opportunity to speak on. And yeah, to your point, minutes and all that will be covered under Sunshine Law. So Frank, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, that's exactly right. The Sunshine Law provides that an agency is defined as the body, which would be the entire school board, and all committees thereof. So to the extent that you're doing your business through a committee, those committees, as Kristen has indicated and as Jim has indicated, they need to be publicly advertised. Those meetings need to be publicly advertised, and anything that you would do as a board, you would do with respect to the committee.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that we get some training for committee chairman and vice chairman and refreshers on that. Yeah.
Just one last thing. As far as when we go through it, all the different committees, the minutes getting to the other board members so they can review them, so they have enough time prior to the public meeting.
That's the only way this all works.
Yeah, I was making sure that the information flows freely to us.
Yeah, the only way this works is as structured is if the committees do their job and the other board members that aren't on the committee review that work so that they're informed to make decisions and vote. Yep. Anything else? Okay. With that, we will adjourn. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn so that we can head into the combined work session and regular meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Jim, is there a second? Herb? I'm sorry?
Just for the public to get the comment.
Yeah, we're going to have public comment until the regular meeting, which is going to start in about 10 seconds. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? The 2014 reorganization meeting stands adjourned. We'll now move into the combined work session and regular meeting agenda. So I will call the December 2nd, 2014 work session and regular board meeting combined to order. We need to do the pledge again? We don't need to do the pledge again. We did the pledge already. I've already announced executive sessions and announcements and attendance. So we'll move on to recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
Mr. President, it gives me great pleasure to introduce two fine, outstanding Methacton High School students, Arun Anand and Kelly Zhang, for both receiving a perfect score of 2,400 on the SAT. Kelly and Arun, would you please come forward?
So have we decided on colleges yet? Have we decided colleges yet? No? I have a feeling you have some choices.
I will make the board aware and the public that these fine students are one of 8 in the recent 5 years that have obtained this distinct honor, and it is amazing. And thank you for all your hard work, and certainly this is a tribute not only to the work that you do, but a work that your parents contribute to your well-being, as well as the other students in your district, as well as your staff that teach you on a day-to-day basis. So congratulations. Our second presentation, I'd like to introduce Athletic Director Mr. Paul Spiewak to come forward. We have 2 presentations, one for Girls Tennis Pac-10 Championship and one for Boys Golf Pac-10 Championship. Mr. Spiewak.
Thank you very much. We very much appreciate you having us here this evening to honor, in particular, our 2 sports teams that won Pac-10 championships this fall. We're very proud of our fall accomplishments on and off the field. I know that boys soccer and football had probably their most successful seasons in over a decade. One of the girls here tonight, Mihaela Codreanu, won an individual district championship in girls tennis, which is outstanding. And along with those accomplishments, we have our 2 Pac-10 champions in girls tennis and also golf. So I would like to call up first our boys head coach, our head boys golf coach, Kevin Flanagan.
I'd just like to thank the board for having us here tonight. With one graduating senior, hopefully we'll be doing this the next couple of years as well. I'd like to thank Dr. Zerbe and Mr. Spiewak for the continued support as well. You know, sometimes when you're successful, it's at the cost of something. But you know, our boys and our girls tennis team are fine citizens. The other coaches in the league continually commend us for our play. So that's a credit to you guys. So I'll call you guys down alphabetically. Junior Anthony Sinelli. Junior Adam Duca. Junior Zach Feaster. Sophomore Gunnar Gale. Sophomore Connor McCaffrey. Sophomore John McGrory. Sophomore Max Rennie. Sophomore Dan Rieger. Sophomore Harvey Smith. Sophomore Kyle Vance. And our lone senior, and he'll be missed, Matt Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, congratulations. Thank you, gentlemen. And now I'd like to introduce to all of you our head girls tennis coach, Kathy Miller. Even if they're not here, they're in here, so we just don't announce them. I'll leave it right here for you.
I'd like to echo what Kevin said. Thanks to the board, Dr. Zerbe, Mr. Spiewak for the continuing support throughout the years. This is the 5th year in a row that the girls' tennis team won the Pac-10, so that's a credit to a number of them up there. It was a very successful season. Like the golf team, we only have one senior on the squad, so it looks next year looks to be very competitive, and we should have a very good year again. I'm looking forward to it. We'll start with, and it's alphabetical, guys, so we're good. Junior Christine Benson. Junior Alejandra Castaneda. Pac-10 singles champion and District 1 doubles or singles champion, Mihaela Kodranu. She's a junior, too. Junior Lisa George. Junior Maria George. Sophomore Sydney Markowitz. We're missing one. We're missing one.
Maybe just name her and I'll give her this one.
I got it. We're good. You got it? No. Sophomore Sydney Thompson. There they are. Little out of alphabet. Don't look. Don't worry about it. Sophomore Amanda Morduchet. Pac-10 doubles champ.
Congratulations.
And sophomore Katie Benson. Two girls could not be with us tonight. Paige McDougall Jr. was part of the Pac-10 doubles championship team. And the only senior, the lone senior who's at band practice, Emily Wishart. Good season, girls.
Congratulations.
Any other guest speakers?
Though the agenda talks about item 5.3, transportation report, there is no transportation report for this evening.
Very well. Thank you. Congratulations, everybody. We'll now move into item number 6, reports. So in a transition period and not a lot of time since the last board meeting, I'm not sure how much the committees will have to report, but we'll go down the line. Finance Committee, you want to, anything to, go ahead.
We really don't have much to report on the Finance Committee meeting, other than that we'll be discussing the bond refinancing discussions later on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Policy Committee?
Yes, the Policy Committee completed its meeting the day after our last board meeting, and we do have a couple of policies that are for second reading tonight.
Great. The Phillips Lane, Property IU and Novotec.
Property Committee, we have Worcester's making their final determination this month, and I believe that's on the 17th. And we haven't had any meetings because it's only the second day of the month for Votech, the intermediate unit, but the Votech has their annual Christmas traditional holiday dinner, and that's at on the 15th at 5:30 p.m. at the North Monaco Technical Career Center. So that's Monday, December 15th.
And everybody should have gotten this in the mail, and the RSVP is by Friday. And don't miss it. It's a wonderful event.
Anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so that takes care of Votech. So 6.6 Community Liaison. Kathleen and Herb, anything?
Yes, for Lower Providence, I just wanted to announce that the Planning Commission listened to a request from the Methacton School District for an electronic sign to be placed at the entrance of the Arcola Skyview campus. The Commission actually recommended that the Township go back and look at and evaluate any and all their electronic signs in the Township.
And Worcester, the only thing Mr. Phillips kind of stole my thunder there is the conditional use hearing results on the 17th. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislative, I don't have anything to report this evening. Technology, Herb?
Don't have anything to report.
Federal Relations Network, Mrs. Woodring?
Yes, I have an interesting little nugget that was forwarded on from the National School Board Association. There was a net increase of 4 school board members in the 114th Congress, which brings the total to 28, or 5% of the U.S. House and Senate are former school board members. The 5 new members, there was 1 retiring, which brings the total net to 4. The 5 new members, 2 from Michigan, 2 from Florida, and 1 from Arkansas.
So there's hope for us all. Thank you. Communications and Community Relations, Mr. McFarland?
Yes, I do have if I could just take a moment of the board's time. We've been working on a draft, as we discussed in the last meeting, of the format and the type of communication. So I'd like to just distribute this, hoping I have enough. And again, these are draft items, not complete but I wanted to give the board an idea of directionally, one of each, where we're going. And before I go any further, Mrs. Lynch has done a great deal of, I think, excellent work on the format and the template that we're going to use for the monthly communication. We expect to publish the first issue in December, pending some further development and approval by the board. And we will include with that issue a short bio of each board member, since many people seeing this document will not be as familiar with everyone who's on the board. So we wanted to start with that. We will also have a link to the board goals that have been approved. There is also a link to the regular board meeting, so that those that choose to watch that video can do so. So we will be looking to publish that sometime later this month, along the lines of this draft, and then another version of this for final approval. If I may, I have a short letter that we would include with this, again, a draft subject to board approval, but I think it would be helpful for the board and the audience to hear a little bit about the intent. So the letter in its draft form reads, "The Methacton School Board has a desire and a responsibility to inform our constituents about issues and projects impacting the district. While these points are all discussed in the monthly meetings, some additional communication and background can better inform district residents, leading to better understanding of decisions made by the board. Constituents include all district staff and teachers, parents of students in attendance, taxpayers in the district, and most importantly, the students for whom we strive to provide the best possible educational experience. We intend to issue an update monthly with in-depth focus on one or two issues. To the best of our ability, facts will be presented, and where appropriate, links to additional information on the topic will be provided. Typical topics may include issues such as financial challenges, field and other project updates, enrollment information, etc. Communication about school activities, etc. will still be provided by Dr. Zerbe and his staff, as has always been the case. We hope you'll find this communication informative and helpful in providing more comprehensive understanding of your school system. We are making every effort to maintain and improve upon the excellent historic cultural success of Methacton." So that would be part of our introduction to explain why we're issuing this, and we would do this on a regular monthly basis beginning in December.
Any questions or comments for Peter?
I have one. Peter, I want to thank you very much for heading this up. It's an excellent, excellent piece of work, and the committee ought to be commended for putting something like this together. It's very, very, very well done. One thing I do want to point out, though, is communications about school activities has been something that I believe has been a challenge, and I know I've spoken to Dr. Zerbe about it in the past. I'd like to see at some point, whether this committee work on it or an ad hoc one come up with it, where we create a monthly communication regarding the various school activities that are going on within the district between all the schools. I mean, you have certain, sports activities that are going on, but there's really no concise, singular document that lists these things in one place where you can go. Sure, you can go, poke around the district website for some of this stuff, but I think we have such an opportune time to work something out on this. I believe that it always been relayed to me, and also with personal experience, trying to find out when something is occurring. And I think that we could do some work on that as well regarding the school activities. Thanks.
Well, we'll certainly work with Dr. Zerbe and Mrs. Lynch as we develop this process to try to improve all elements of the communication. We mentioned, I won't go into it, but not just this newsletter, but some localized meetings with smaller groups, other venues that we will have to try to communicate some of these issues in more than one way, but this would be our first published electronic communication. So the other elements will follow in the months ahead, and we'll certainly work with the administration to try and broaden out and get more information like these school activities as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great start, and you and Angela and the team are to be commended. I mean, this is introduces the concept and introduces the board and kind of sets the stage for future topics. So I think very, very well done. Other comments or questions for Peter? Great. Anything else? Great, thank you. Moving on to student board representatives.
Thank you, Board. First, I'd like to express my gratitude over efforts made to further our involvement in this notable opportunity as student reps. I'm sure all four of us truly appreciate that. Continuing on to our report, within the upcoming weeks, both Arcola and Methacton will be hosting winter concerts. These students will have the opportunity to showcase their musical talents and hard work. On December 5th, the Arcola Select Choir and Girls Ensemble will be performing at the Tree Light event at Lower Providence Library. This is a fantastic service that the students are doing to lighten the mood with their songs. Additionally, Keystones and SAT exams are coming this month, and of course, we hope for positive results. Natalia?
Winter sports are also now underway at the high school. Everyone's excited for a new season. The first boys basketball game, home game, will be held Saturday, December 13th. Also, last month, the Student Council held a Camp Out for Hunger food drive. Hundreds of cans were collected to serve a good cause. And there will be holiday house tours on December 7th. There are 5 homes participating and each have a different theme. And the proceeds are going to benefit the Field Renovation Fund and educational enrichments through the EFMC. That's all for us.
Thank you. Angela, anything to report? I'm sorry, Brenda, you have a question? Oh, did I miss something? I'm sorry. Oh, in education. Actually, I missed a couple. Sorry.
Do you want me to wait?
Do you mind if she goes first? Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So as Natalia mentioned, during the holiday season, a great deal of fundraising takes place in each of our schools. Coat drives, warm clothing drives, food drives, toys for tots, and more. Our students raise many tens of thousands of dollars each year in support of Methacton families in need, as well as agencies within our community and beyond. So please look to our website, Facebook, and Twitter for photos and information about how you can support their efforts and support the good citizenship of all of our students. I'll be working closely with teachers and administrators, taking photos for you and writing news articles about these fine efforts. While this work is very important, I would also mention that we have a great deal of joyous activity in our district as well, with winter concerts and programs in each of our schools, and those are also available obviously on our website. The schedule for these can also be found in the coming days. Our communications efforts of note are directed towards promoting 2 programs for parents, a drug abuse prevention awareness program and a mental health first aid training. Details of both of which can be also found on our website and will be distributed to families, and some of which already were. And a recent press conference for the Warrior Pride campaign was also held, as well as we are currently wrapping up the district's Employee United Way campaign, and I'll be assisting with the development of the board's debut board update newsletter. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So for curriculum, we will be celebrating Computer Science Education Week, December 8th to 14th, where students around the world are invited to participate in the Hour of Code, a 1-hour introduction to computer science. It's designed to demystify code and show that anybody can learn the basics. It is supported by partners such as Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and the College Board. In Methacton, students at Arcola participated last year. This year, Brooke Malartrick, our elementary technology integration specialist, is inviting elementary teachers to involve their students in the Hour of Code. I'm so excited about that. And in particular, it will help them make connections between coding and problem solving that can be directly correlated to math practices and engineering design. Come on, we want a lot of girls in this. The idea behind the 1 hour is to spark interest in and future conversations about opportunities for coding and for using technology in general. Tomorrow there will be our second Curriculum Council meeting. It will be held in the afternoon. And Dr. Dean Ryan Washington provided training to our paraprofessionals last Tuesday and Wednesday, covering topics on special education updates and managing student behavior. And the Keystone exams will be given again, as was said. And in celebration of National Education Week, we did some things in our elementary schools. And they picked one day of the week. In some cases, there were parent and grandparent visitations to classrooms where the visitors observed and participated in various activities related to literacy, math, and technology integration. In Worcester, they had a kindergarten book picnic, during which parents celebrated by reading with their children in the classroom. And Woodland's Scholastic Book Fair was held on Family Night. And at Skyview, the highlight was the 5th grade's Living Museum Day on Tuesday, which was attended by 507 parents, grandparents, and friends of 5th grade students. I think that's phenomenal. And during this day, the students are dressed in costume as a historical figure, and as the visitors come through, sort of like a wax museum, they give information that they've researched on the character they have.
Thank you very much for that fantastic report, and I'm sorry I skipped over you. Mrs. Barone, Educational Foundation Liaison.
Yes, well, I did want to say that the meeting is tonight, so I am unable to attend.
You can't be in two places at once?
I tried, it didn't work. Anyway, I wanted to add to Ms. Klachani's note that tomorrow is the holiday, this Sunday is the Holiday House Tour. It is from 1 to 6 p.m., and the tickets are $25. They do benefit, I think, the Fields Project, and they are available online or from a board member or from the board liaison. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, I think, Home and School Liaison, Mrs. Hackett and Mrs. Woodring.
I don't have a report.
I will plan to attend the high school home and school meeting, which is Thursday morning.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Dr. Zerbe, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you. Just an update to a statement that Mr. Phillips mentioned. The Worcester Township Board of Supervisors will be holding the meeting on the decision of conditional use application before the Township of Worcester on December 17th, and that'll be at the Community Hall building. It's the same building where we've had all the conditional use hearings. It will be a Township Supervisor meeting, not a typical conditional use hearing. So I just want to clarify that. I also want to make mention that to the public and to the board that our field bid openings are scheduled for 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon at the Farina building. You're all welcome to join us for the bid openings. We are hopeful that the bids, as they're received, are able to be tabulated and provided to our committee for review, and hopefully a recommendation, or at least a preliminary recommendation, to the board by late next week. That's currently what we're looking to do. If you do recall, I did ask the board to reserve December 18th as a date that we may advertise in advance, 72 hours in advance, or 24 hours in advance, in order to provide an opportunity for the board, if need be, to consider anything related to the application before Worcester Township, or the bids as they're received tomorrow afternoon. I will confer with the president of the school board as to whether or not we will or will not schedule that particular meeting. I also want to make mention that, as Angela did, we did hold a press conference on the fundraising efforts. It was well attended. We had our entire capital campaign team on hand, as well as our honorary chairperson, Mr. Larry Smith, former chief financial officer of Comcast. And we certainly appreciate everyone's attendance in last evening's press release. But most importantly, we want to just thank Mr. Smith for stepping up and showing his leadership in recognizing the need for this project. As a Worcester Township resident and a former top executive for one of the country's biggest corporations, it speaks volumes for his desire to step forward and help us lead this process. So I just want to thank him publicly. The next item I have for an update is on the capacity and enrollment study. I'm informing the public and the board this evening that we are unable to provide the planned public presentation as originally planned. However, we are rescheduling that presentation for the public meeting scheduled in the 4th week of January. The last item I have for the board is, I'm just going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Whiteleather to give an update on the budgeting process.
What budget? Just kidding.
The budget that's before us for the 2015-16.
Listen, accountants and jokes don't mix.
Budget process has been going well. We had all of our buildings and departments submit their budget requests to my office by the November 14th deadline, so that was great. Right now, we're in the midst of doing budget reviews with all the building principals, departmental supervisors. That's our initial review of the budgets to kind of hash through those as we're compiling all the data necessary to present to you our initial draft of the budget. So things are underway. We are pulling together the information necessary to provide members of Finance Committee and ultimately members of the board with a comprehensive review of our operational needs for the following fiscal year. And as those items are coming into finality at the end of this week, I will conclude all of my budget meetings. Any further internal meetings would be conducted thereafter. Obviously, kicking off in January begins the real intensive process. Act 1 and deadlines and preliminary proposed budget adoptions and advertisements and things of that sort will kick off in earnest. But things are well underway. They're running smoothly. I expect them to continue to do so, and certainly we'll have some gainful discussions coming up here shortly as we get the process started in earnest. So any questions I'll be happy to answer, but things are going well so far.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteleather. And lastly, if for chance this happens to be the last meeting for the 2014 school year, I just want to wish our students, our parents, our community, and our board members a joyous and wonderful holiday season. That ends my report.
Thank you. We will now take public comment on board action items. Is there any public comment on board action items? Candy? Okay.
Good evening, John Andrews, Lower Providence, and I wish success to our new president and vice president in the coming year. One of the last items on tonight's voting agenda is the class size policy, number 126, and I'd spoken previously on the drastic change in that relative to small classes, and the policy, as you're voting on it, calls for your receiving information about the small class sizes this year by December 1st. You know whether that goal has been met. I don't know. And also, it calls on the board by December 15th to make any decisions relative to that. So I don't know how that's going to be affected, since, with the exception of maybe December 18th, we're going on winter break whenever this meeting is over. Winter break until well into January. Another item on the list of bills is the Bartle Law Firm, the solicitor, for appraisal/litigation on Shannondale for $25,000. Usually things aren't billed from the law firms to the even $1,000, and I seem to recall that some years ago, where the Shannondale assessment or reassessment activity has been going on some years ago, that the board had hired an expert for appraising that property. So I'm a little confused, and where the thing has been going on for so long, at some point it's appropriate to give a status report on that issue. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. And we'll address the points you brought up during those appropriate items. Candy, did you have something?
Candy Alba, I just have a question, a courtesy to the floor, that any questions we have now are going to be answered by email. I'm just curious because I've asked a number of questions of the board, and the people have seen it on the tape when it's on television, and I've asked a number of questions that people would ask, how will they know the response to my questions if I get an email? I mean, most of the questions I ask are topics that are discussed at the board, so I think it does a disservice to the public that if I get, I mean, I have never received any answers. I mean, even the questions I had last month about Red Maverick, I haven't received any answers. I had questions about the insurance companies in June. I haven't received any answers. So I think to say if I have a question that I put to the board that's relevant to members of the community, they're not going to know the response unless you read the response in my email or I bring it in. So I don't understand why now all our questions that are answered are going to be not made public. That's my only question.
Thank you. I think we can take a look at that with communications and figure out the best way to respond to those types of items. Any other board comment on, public comment on board action items? Okay. Moving on to item number 8, board meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion to approve the board meeting minutes of the work session on November 11th and the board meeting minutes of the regular board meeting held on November 18th, both on 2014. Is there a motion? Does someone want to take them separately? You want to take them separately? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the work session meeting minutes from November 11th? Brenda, is there a second? Greg? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. So 8-0 with 1 abstention. You're abstaining because you were absent from the board meeting.
I watched the reruns. Did that count?
We'll just go with your abstention. All right, thank you. Now may I have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes from the regular board meeting held on November 18th, 2014. Motion from Kathleen. Is there a second? Peter, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, fiscal items. Mr. Whiteleather.
Thank you. Only 2 items on for this evening. The first is the monthly list of bills on for your approval as attached. And item 9.2, the treasurer's report. Obviously, due to the earliness of the reorganization meeting, the treasurer's report will be provided in January for both months. And with that, that concludes my extensive report for tonight.
So what we'll do, so I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the list of bills, and then we'll take discussion up at that point. And there's no treasurer's report to approve. So may I have a motion to approve the list of bills? Jim, is there a second? Herb? Discussion. Any discussion on list of bills? I'll go with Kim and then Greg.
All right. In reviewing the list of bills, I think that I calculated probably around $13,000 that we have paid out for cyber charter schools this month. In reviewing the recent PSBA materials, after the performance profile data came out, the cyber charter schools scored so low and so poorly that I am wondering if this is an opportunity for us to perhaps contact these parents, these guardians, and maybe convince them that the education that we can afford them through Methacton School District is far better than what they're receiving through a cyber charter program, and save ourselves $13,000 at least a month.
That's really interesting. I don't know, are we precluded from basically advertising to this?
No, actually, it's a great comment, and I can tell you that Ms. Angstead, or Dr. Angstead and myself, as well as other conversations with Mr. Harney and Mr. Whiteleather, we've had conversations related to this. Currently, under the cyber program that we have in our high school, they provide in the agreement the ability to do additional advertising for the district to entice students to come back into our program that's physically housed on site with our teachers in use of their curriculum and the technology that they have. So we certainly believe that our students are performing better in our brick and mortar environment in this different instructional delivery methodology. And Susan is working on this right now, and we anticipate not only sending out invitations and letters to the families that are currently in cyber schools other than the ones that we currently participate with, but we're looking to bring them in and have the conversations and give them the information necessary for making an informed decision about where their children should be educated and how they can be educated in an environment that might be more, not only more conducive to what their needs are, but also in an environment that provides them a top-notch education. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and that's something we're working on, and we'll keep the board apprised of our progress in that program.
Thank you. Greg, you had a comment?
Yeah, Stuart, would you mind just commenting on the large $130,000 item for the intermediate unit, and just talk a little bit about what that covers, and then as far as that particular portion of the bill and the whole bill?
Sure. The bill he's referring to, the bill from MCIU reflects special education services that we initially request from the IU. Basically what you do in the beginning of the year is you compile all the services that you believe you would require from the IU. Usually it's very specialized special education services. The IU then develops a budget based upon your needs. They have cost per hour affiliated with certain services provided. They develop what is a budget for your school district for those services for the year. Now, that is not put that under glass initially, it's done, it's over with. That is a living document that changes very often throughout the year. You have students that come on, go off, leave the district, come into the district, so there can be situations where the bill would ultimately increase. There's situations where the bill will decrease. The way that it is set up in a billing cycle is it's usually billed over 4 to 6 installments over the course of a year. And as I say, as that you get closer towards the end of the year, the reconciliation process allows you to either, one, finalize what your true costs are for the year, and that can be in the form of a credit back to the district ultimately, or it could be additional charges. But as I say, the initial document is not the final document. It evolves over the course of the year, but the installment that you see in here represents 30% of what we initially had budgeted relative to the services we anticipated at the beginning of the year.
And would you say, I guess your team actually monitors those ins and outs quite a bit, I mean, from an audit perspective, to make sure we're getting billed the accurate amount, and or I guess at the end the true up that occurs. I mean, you kind of go through a process. That's what you described the reconciliation to be.
Correct. What you do, anytime you're working with services that are provided through an outside agency, it's very much a collaborative process. You're working with the departments that are in charge of those services relative to ensuring, one, that the bills are accurate and reflective of the services being provided, two, establishing at the end of the year where you're doing your final end-of-year audit accruals and such. So it's really, from our standpoint, we obviously are maintaining a tight watch over those expenses as we're going out of the district relative to the services being provided. We also maintain a very strong relationship with the departments that are most closely affiliated with the services being provided. So yes, when we are looking at our bills that are coming in and out of the district relative to the services being provided, we do maintain a close watch as well as a very collaborative approach with the various departments that are, again, most closely responsible for those bills affiliated with the services being provided, in this case, the IU.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Maria.
Stuart, I noticed there was something on here for Frog Hollow Racket Club that we paid for tennis lessons. Is that something we normally do?
Depending upon the need for certain programs or initiatives or trainings or professional development or something within the athletic programs, it is not uncommon that we would have an outside agency to help us, whether it be tennis or football or any other sport that would be offered through the Methacton School District. So it is not unusual to see a service being provided by an outside agency relative to a specific need.
So we should look forward to seeing one of our tennis students at Wimbledon in a couple of years?
I certainly hope so.
Hopefully a student, not an administrator. Anyone else? Other question? Okay. If there's no other questions, we have a motion and a second to approve the list of bills as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. Moving on to personnel items, Mr. Harney.
Yes, this evening we have two change of status classified for your approval. We have 5 items under supplemental contracts for your approval. We're asking your approval for the addition of one Steve Avella to our classified substitute list. Also asking you to approve the list of volunteers that are attached. And we have 2 advisements for this evening.
So again, we'll take a motion in a second if there's any discussion. I'm going to assume that everyone's okay with taking all this as one block. If not, let me know. So I will ask for a motion to approve all items under number 10, personnel items as presented. Motion, Mr. Phillips. Is there a second? Mr. Roth, discussion? Question or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. Moving on to curriculum and programs, number 11, Mrs. Katona.
There are no items for approval this evening.
Thank you. Item number 12, policy, Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Items 12.1, first reading for policy 004, membership and organization. These are our board policies that have been before the committee for several months and have undergone extensive review in order to do several things, but most importantly, to make sure that committee profiles were established to give direction to board members or new board members as to what their duties would be in relationship to taking on committee roles. I imagine with some of the discussion here this evening and the change in committee structure will allow us to address those additionally in the near future. And lastly, under organization, it also allows us, we've done extensive work with the help of Ms. Woodring to update and to finalize a orientation program for new board members. So those are basically the two items related to the first reading. Under 12.2 for a second reading, which is the only item for approval this evening, which is policy 126, class size. There was extensive work and discussion on this particular item, and what we have before you are the changes. The changes, we delineated between the three areas to delineate the way we organize our student population. So we moved from a K2 delineation to a K4, from a 3-6 to a 5-8, and from a 7-12 to a 9-12, and essentially allowed this policy to act as the ceiling and as a mechanism for informing the board of any programs that are under-enrolled and requiring the board to give the superintendent direction as to how to deal with those under-enrollments. It also talks about giving notice to the board when enrollments need to creep above the intended ceilings. So it was our discussion that from time to time, enrollment in classes may need to hover between, instead of 25 for K4, it might need to be 26 or 27 from time to time, just as the nature of enrollments and withdrawals occur. So with that said, it was mentioned earlier this evening by one of our members of the public about how things would be handled with December 15th and October 1. Well, since this policy really is being suggested to be acted upon here this evening, it was agreed upon as a basis for the board goals which were adopted back in October of 2014, that information was already going to be sequestered and provided to the board, therefore, meeting the need for us to make informed decisions. And therefore, this timeline will take effect as written for the upcoming school year. Now, are there any comments from the policy chair or any members of the policy committee related to class size?
I agree that was our conversation. We had extensive discussion concerning the aspect in those 3 paragraphs about special subject areas, and we changed the language slightly because we felt that it made sense for what we're doing in the district. As far as the date of December the 1st, we did change that to December 15th to give us time to have that information this year.
That's correct.
Right. For next year's work. Okay. Thank you.
So at this point, I'll ask for a motion to approve the item on 12.2, second reading, policy 126, class size. Is there a motion? Sackett, is there a second? Peter, discussion? Kim?
I have a comment on 12.1. Is it appropriate to make that comment now or not?
Let's get through the vote on 12.2, and then we'll go back to that one before we leave policy. Any comments on 12.2? There's a motion and a second. Hearing none. All those in favor?
I want a quick point of clarification just on these dates. The dates are in there so that the policy as constructed would be accurate going forward.
Correct.
But in this current year, we are still going to receive this information on the 15th or before the 15th, correct, so that we can act on it in this current year. So I just wanted to make that distinction because we didn't see it on October 1st of this year, but the policy change had not been undertaken. So I just want to kind of clarify that. This is really more structured for future use, while at the same time in this current year, we do expect to see this information and take appropriate action as a result. And the only other point I would make to kind of back up, Brenda, some of the discussion on variance below maximum would be, for example, where there would be chemistry labs that are physically constrained from being more than 12 or 16 students. So if we looked at 4 chemistry classes at 16 students each, that would be not subject to the question about why didn't we have 2 classes instead of 4. So, I mean, that was the intent behind that language.
Thanks for the clarification. Other questions or comments? Okay, with the motion in a second, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? All right, so going back to 12.1, Kim, you had a question or point of order?
Yeah, as Dr. Zerbe had mentioned, Donna and I did some work to, I guess, get in order the orientation program for new board members, and Mrs. Hackett, Mr. McFarland, and Mr. Pelicano had agreed to pilot the retooled orientation program, and I think Donna had scheduled that for early January. And I guess my question is, a lot of coordination has to go into that, and I'm just wondering if that's got a bow on it, it's wrapped up, it's ready to go, or if there's something else that I need to do or coordinate with Donna, because there's a lot of scheduling, there's some information that has to be ordered from PSBA, so I'm hoping that we're ready to go.
Let me check with Donna to see what the status is of that, and I will provide an update to the board members in my Friday memo. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else on policy before we move on? Okay, thank you. Item number 13, other, Dr. Zerbe.
I have a draft of a Methacton School District Board of School Directors schedule. And what I would like the actual motion to read this evening, because we were not able to finalize the actual locations and/or times of all the committee meetings, I'm going to ask the motion to be adjusted to this: to approve the superintendent to use the draft calendar as a basis for finalizing the committee schedule with the chairpersons and for final approval by the board president. And if we can pass that resolution, I will work with the committee chairpersons for the remainder of this week or whenever they're available to establish the locations and dates according to this draft, and then provide that to the president for finalization and then for advertisement in public newspaper. But as of this evening, I do not have all the information necessary to actually vote on a document.
Yeah, I think with the changes, it's understandable. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the draft calendar as a basis for the administration finalizing the 2015 meeting schedule of board meetings and committee meetings, working with each of the chairmen and getting approval from the president? Motion from, is that Jim? Yes. Is there a second?
Aye.
Herb? Any discussion?
I would like to postpone a vote on this. I would prefer to vote on a complete list. I don't want to have to redact what we do. We already need to look at our summer schedule. We had issues this summer with we normally have a hiatus, at least for July, for the actual board meeting, while we do continue to have all of our committee meetings. We run into issues when we have to constantly go back and change these dates. So I would propose that we wait until we have a full, complete list, and then we take a vote.
Well, so this is a full list. I think there may be changes of times and location, but this has meetings in July and August, and the whole point of doing it this way is to have the year planned out so we don't have to make any changes. Now, there's going to be stuff that comes up where we have to move something, or there's a special meeting that comes up, but the idea behind this was to have everything laid out for the year so that we didn't have to go back and, death by a thousand cuts.
Well, I mean, I understand that, except for the fact that every summer since I've been on the board, we do not have a July meeting, and it's on this calendar. So I just would prefer that we at least maybe we decide on that right now. We have it, we don't have it, whatever it is, but we get people that get angry every year, whether it's printed or not, and usually they get mad because it's printed and then we cancel it, so.
Well, the feedback that I had gotten was that board members had wanted to have a meeting every month, including summer, and if folks were on vacation, that they just wouldn't be able to make it. So that's why we have that on there. But we certainly can have that discussion now. That was just the feedback that I had gotten from folks after last summer.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that too, regarding the meetings. I definitely think we should have a meeting every month. Now, granted, it's inevitable that there will be times where members cannot make that meeting. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, in midsummer next year. I mean, so I think that the whole idea is to get something down on paper so we can put these dates on their calendar. I'm fine with the way this works. Except as was outlined with what Dr. Zerbe said. But I think it is important that we have those meetings scheduled.
Has this been, compared against the instructional calendar so that we know, for example, February 3rd or 9th would not be like an Act 83 day? I mean, those are the conflicts that I guess I would look at first. But I don't know how much flexibility you're building into this sort of draft. I mean, if we have an opportunity to go check to make sure there's no such conflicts, or there's like not a holiday here or something, I'm all right.
This is a draft in its most infant form. Okay. So my recommendation is, as I read here, for me to work with the chairpersons to find out what works best for them and their committee members. And then we will take that information back, and these dates may not necessarily be the dates, but the idea is that there will be certain committees would normally hit certain regular times throughout a month. So, for example, the board meeting is typically here on the 4th Tuesday of the month. Finance and HR were following the third evenings of Tuesday evenings of the month, and then there were still some outstanding issues related to education and other committees. Certainly, these dates do not reflect a thorough review against our instructional calendar or any of your calendars. It is just a basis to say what we've done in the past is complete a comprehensive calendar, so we have one advertisement cost, and then if we need to not have a meeting, it is easier to postpone or cancel a meeting due to people not being able to make it, holidays, whatever it may be. Certainly won't schedule things on holidays, excuse me for saying that. But essentially being able to postpone things rather than having to re-advertise for a new meeting. So all this really does is, as a starting point for our conversations, not necessarily are any of these dates in stone at this moment.
Brenda, you had a comment?
Yes, this is a governmental body that is elected, and I think Election Day is on here. It's probably not a good day to have on the calendar.
I want you to know that this was done like a couple hours ago. And it was giving you a basis for what this thing would look like, the number of meetings, so more visual than an accurate calendar representation.
Yeah, I think, keep in mind that I just got to what I proposed to David recently, because I had to talk to everyone on the board and try to get some conversations with chair people about when meetings would be, but there's just some that we haven't gotten to them yet. So, for example, education's not on here just because we're trying to figure all that out. So,
I think this is a marvelous idea to do this, to have the year structured the way it is. And we do have to start at the beginning of January, and this is our last meeting before that. So somehow or other, we have to find a way to do that, or else advertise January separately.
That's correct.
Any other comments? Jim, do you have something?
No, other than I have the motion on the floor, but if you want me to amend the motion for Election Day that our meeting starts at 8:30 rather than...
I just don't think we should do it on election
Okay.
day. I mean,
Okay,
as someone who
mean-
ran for office, I had to leave the polls to come here. You know that people are working in the polls and assisting things, and the district's
I'm
closed.
fully
so-
aware for the last 5 years it's been like
So-
that. I mean, so do you want me to amend my motion that we change, that he has discretion to change the election
No, I think
day?
he does the way the motions.
Okay.
So this is a basis. Yeah, he'll work on with the act calendar and board members' calendars and finalize.
Okay, I'll leave the motion as stands.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, there's a motion and a second. The motion is for the administration to use this as draft calendar as a basis to finalize the calendar, working with the committee chairman to lock in the committee dates and working with me to finalize. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, very good. Thank you. Item 13.2.
We have an athletic tournament on for your approval this evening. Approve a trip for Methacton High School girls basketball team to Atlantic City, New Jersey for a Boardwalk Basketball Classic on December 29th, 2014 through the 30th, no cost to the district.
Is there a motion to approve the trip as presented? Mr. Phillips, is there a second? Mr. Pellicano, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Anything else under other?
I have no other items under other.
Thank you. Item number 14, dates for board members' calendars. I would just call out again, as Dr. Zerbe mentioned, please keep a hold on December 18th. We may schedule a special meeting if it's appropriate based on the bid returns and the time needed to analyze the proposals. If we don't have time to do that, we would likely look at scheduling something in early January, and that will be a special meeting that we'll reach out to folks on. But that's all that I have on board members' calendars. Item number 15, old business. We have one item under old business, the bond refinancing discussion. We had previously had a discussion, multiple discussions about refinancing. Our last board meeting, Glenn Willard was in and discussed option A and B. We said we were going to hold on doing anything. Subsequent to that discussion, a board member asked a question, which was, if we went with option A now, what would the additional cost to potentially doing option B in the future if we wanted to? So, in other words, if we refinanced for the $200,000 savings, what would be the incremental cost if in 2015 we wanted to additionally do option B? So this item is on this to have a discussion to see if there's anything that we want to do in regards to that. And Dr. Zerbe and Mr. Whiteleather, I'm not sure if you have any additional comments that you want to make around this.
No, I just have, just to provide some other detail around your statements, Mr. President. The last work session was on November 11th that PFM was in front of the board. The board was presented additional options by PFM to consider with regards to restructuring debt. At the conclusion of the meeting, the board agreed to defer any action until 2015. Following the meeting, as Mr. President mentioned, I was asked to provide additional information and did so. And basically the question was, if the board was to proceed now with option to refinance in 2014 to realize approximately a $200,000 savings, what would the scenario be in 2015 or later if the board wanted to do a wraparound restructuring program? And the response from PFM in summary form is as follows. If the district chooses to take action on the refinancing option in 2014 to save $200,000, it will require a more involved restructuring in 2015 to achieve the same $1 million per year of cash flow. Ultimately, this would cost approximately $3.2 million as compared to $1.9 million or $1.3 million more than if restructuring was completed in 2015 and included the bonds considered with the refinancing saving of the $200,000.
Do you have anything else?
I have nothing else related to that.
So questions, Jim, go ahead.
No questions on that, but old business I have, so.
Okay, so let's stick with this for now. Any questions or comments on 15.1?
So if we decided that we wanted to go with the first option, which is the around 200,000 that was presented back in October 28th, we can do that now, or we can do that in the spring?
We can do that now in 2014, or we can do that in 2015. And at the last meeting on November 11th, we asked that question of, I believe it was Glenn, or was it Glenn? It was Glenn, and he mentioned that if there's any inkling at all by the board to potentially needing to do a restructuring, that holding off until 2015 was his recommendation, because there's no difference in doing this refinancing for the 200,000 in 14 versus 15. The difference is that if you do the 200 in 2014, you increase the cost of doing anything different if the board so chooses to do that. Now, we're not saying, as superintendent or business manager, that we need to do the restructuring. We're saying, and I'm saying, that we should make that decision once we have all the information, once we get further into the budgeting process, once we know where we're going to land, preferably late February, early March of 2015, you will have a better idea of where we stand, not only for the 15-16 budget, but you will also understand that you'll have a better projection of where the next 5 years will be, as we need to consider that as part of every decision we make. What decisions we make today, and how they will impact us into the future. So all we're really saying is, if it makes no difference in holding off, we should hold off and allow any options before the board, so that you can make the best informed decisions without any loss to the district.
So just to clarify, other than risk of interest rate changes, what risk is there if we don't refinance and take the $200,000 savings now?
It's my understanding from my conversations with Mr. Whiteleather, his conversations with PFM, that there's no additional risk other than the interest rate changes.
Is that right?
That is correct. If you recall, when Mr. Williard spoke at the last meeting, he had indicated that we were actually early in the process relative to doing that straight refunding. So there would be, other than, as Dr. Zerbe indicated, interest rate risk, which it is what it is. Nobody can gauge what that'll be in the future. If we could, that would be a wonderful thing, but unfortunately we can't. We can certainly take advantage of the $200,000 savings, that portion of it, in 2015. And as Dr. Zerbe said, and certainly it's more advantageous for us to kind of hash out the full game plan and all the variables that are going to come into play relative to budget before we look at any possible scenario for which we may need to look at this, as well as any other options we may need to look at as an organization.
I would just like to add, I don't see any harm in waiting, but I can't imagine a scenario where we're going to vote to approve something that's going to cost this district $2 million down the road. So from that perspective, that's just kind of from where I sit, and so I'm talking to my fellow board members about it. I think that's the decision before us is, do you think we'd ever envision a scenario where we're going to kick that can down the road that much?
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for that. I want the $200,000, whether we do it tonight or at a future meeting. If folks want to keep their powder dry on that, I'm fine with that, but that's where I'm at as well. Kim?
I guess thinking in terms of our past budgets and how long some years we've had to wait for the state to plug in some of those holes, because this is a transition, governor to governor, I guess I'm asking Stuart, do you have any sense for how smoothly that's going to go? Will we be waiting till like June 1st until we get the figures, do you anticipate, from the state?
The short answer to your question is I hope we're not waiting that long. The new governor, anytime a governorship changes, they get an additional month to provide budget. So Governor Wolf would have till March to provide a budget, and that's obviously contingent upon legislative approval. Those have been around for a few years. No times where governor's proposal ultimately to legislative passage has dragged on for months into the summer. Indications early on as far as campaign from now Governor Wolf is that education is a priority for him. What that'll mean in terms of dollars to Methacton as well as the other school districts across state, really unknown at this point. Obviously the state has challenges as the rest of us do as governmental entities, so it's really tough to gauge what that value will be to us, if anything. I can tell you right now, everyone is budgeting status quo. All of my contacts in Montgomery County, fellow business managers, at this point are basically no loss, no gain as far as state funding goes for next year until we have a better idea of what's coming from the governor's office. But obviously, there's always that caution that I would have relative to the second most significant part of our budget is state funding. It comprises about 19% of our budget. Obviously, there can be significant impacts one way or another. I mean, when we really look at this, and certainly we'll get into much more detailed discussions as we get into more of the meat of the budget, but the pension system alone is not only a killer for Methacton School District, it is a significant burden on the state. I don't know how the state is going to address that exclusive of everything else. There's projections of how they're talking about of every dollar generated in excess of what's being generated today through the state. The portion going to pension is such a significant part of that dollar that it becomes concerning from just a standpoint of looking out towards the future. And that's the only, I guess that's really the big thing from my perspective is as we look at things down the road and how we need to position ourselves, obviously whatever options may be available, not exclude this, toss this discussion about the bond refinancing out. There could perhaps be a multitude of other items for which we would need to discuss as an organization, and I think it would just be prudent for us to position ourselves in a way that we allow ourselves the opportunity to look at those options as we become more familiar and understand where the state is coming, as well as the federal government. Even though the federal government is not necessarily a huge part of our budget, it still represents hundreds of thousands of dollars that in one way, shape, or form can become a negative or a positive for us. So I gave a very long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that gives you an idea kind of where I'm coming from.
Don't we have as part of our board goals, though, a process to look at a contingency? And will that contingency that we're looking at as part of our goals kind of cover any of those potential shortfalls that might be out there?
Absolutely. As far as one of the goals that we had put forward is to identify 5% of our budget that we could look at as a potential area for review, prioritization. Obviously that is something we have done. That we obviously will speak about relative to our operations going forward. It obviously becomes, the discussion then evolves into the more of the difficult discussion is, of that 5%, what is it that we really want to look at as far as a reduction? Obviously contractual obligations being one component of your budget, part of those discretionary could impact areas that may not be palatable for purposes of really looking at a way to reduce our operational costs. And those obviously will be discussions that we'll have as we move forward relative to looking at revenues versus expenditures. I can tell you some areas of our revenues are doing very well. EIT tax is doing very, very well. But there's other areas of our budget that are stagnant. And the unfortunate reality is that your operational costs go up, for better or worse. You have things that you can't control that are more of the concern for us as we look at our balancing of everything in there. But as we look at our discretionary costs and that 5%, we obviously may need to have some important discussions as we prioritize moving forward. But, it certainly is a well-made point that Mr. Pellicano is indicating about how we need to identify certain areas of our operation and how those discussions would lead us into next year as we prepared our operational budgets for 15-16.
Anything else?
When we were originally presented this, we were given a timeline that started with the presentation in September and the settlement being 3 months later. So if we are going to do this in 2015 as opposed to doing it now, when do we need to start putting this on our agenda for the various pieces of the presentation?
I think, Stuart, we need two more meetings at some point. We need a meeting to pass a resolution for the administration to engage with PFM to start the process, and then there'll be a final settlement meeting. So it'll require two meetings, and typically, how far apart would those meetings need to be? Is it 30 days apart, or is it more?
Yeah, there's advertising requirements that we need to do per DCED. Department of Community Economic Development. We'd have to advertise that we're doing a bond restructuring, refunding, whatever the case may be. There's also documents that need to be prepared relative to what the scope of what we're going to do. All those take time. We'd obviously need to work with our bond counsel and as well as financial advisors. But typically the time between those two meetings could be probably 30 days would be sufficient, barring something unusual occurring, which would require more time. But I would say 30 days should be a good period between the two meetings.
Okay, so we would need to have it in place before we would make any decisions about our final budget in May. So we need to back up and make sure that we don't miss the dates on that.
Yeah, I think it's most important for us to define exactly what we're looking to do once we come to a point we know we're going to make a decision. From that point, as you say, we need to kind of look backwards from that point to say, let's make sure that this becomes impactful relative to the budget going forward. So yes, it is as equally important for us to decide what we want to do relative to our operation and what we want to do in terms of whether the 200,000 is what we're going with or something else, and then how that needs to flow timeline-wise relative to getting the initial board action to initiate the financial advisors to move the process forward, and then it triggers the events that would unfold as well relative to the documents and signatures and all the other fun stuff that goes along with that once that decision is made.
Thanks, Mr. Whiteleather. If I could just add to, I think maybe where Brenda is going with this, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, is we need to put this on the calendar and get it in front of the Finance Committee early on in the process so that it's on their radar. And as the budget's unfolding and we become familiar with where we need to be, the Finance Committee, the new chair will give us direction about when the right time would be. But we can certainly provide a recommendation at this point, knowing that we'll have most of our information on budget in March, and then we can work from there, either forward or back, to making a decision. And I certainly won't have a final budget until June, but we certainly need to. We should know where we are preliminarily with the state dollars as well as with what we've done and with relationship to some of the contingencies that we've talked about. So if I could make a recommendation, and as so long as it's the will of the board, we will work towards getting a recommended schedule in front of the Finance Committee for dealing with this. And we can certainly keep it on as an agenda item if the chairman so desires for every meeting, so it's right in front of us, so none of us lose track of making sure that this gets taken care of.
Just one if I may, and I may recall this incorrectly, but my recollection was that there was some value to be lost in the 200,000 if we did not act on that relatively in this cycle. So I'm hearing what you're saying tonight, and echoing what Greg has said earlier. I cannot imagine myself voting for the B portion of this. So I don't mind not playing this card now as long as there is no value lost. But I was under the impression prior to tonight that there would be value lost on the Part A. And if that's not the case, then I would be fine with pushing it forward to another schedule. But I want to make sure we're not losing value in the process.
I think there's certainly a belief through at least some of us that there was some value that we lost outside of interest rate fluctuations. So I want to make completely sure that we're not going to lose any value other than the interest rate risk we may take.
The item that you're referring to is bank qualified versus non-bank qualified. What happens is that you can borrow up to $10 million in a calendar year as considered bank qualified. Bank qualified gives you a slightly better rate than non-bank qualified. Relative to the discussion, and it seems the direction of the board, deferring this into 2015 would not entail any risk to the board because there's two things happening. One, there's going to be a need to borrow monies relative to the field project. That amount is right around $5.5 million. So we would have that relative to the additional component of doing this straight refunding. So that $10 million amount was what Glenn was speaking of relative to doing the larger restructuring. So if you recall, the larger restructuring was a value of around $12 million. That's what he was breaking it up into two separate parts, and he was talking about that component. That was where that discussion got into the rate.
Okay. All right. So there's two ways we can go here. One, we can take no action, and I think to Dr. Zerbe's recommendation, we'll work with the Finance Committee to keep that on the agenda in front of us for further action in 15. Or certainly if someone wants to make a motion now, they can do that. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Additional old business, Jim, you had something?
Yes, I'll use the bond refinancing as a segue into it. One thing that Stuart mentioned was the 19% from the state, and 5% of our budget is basically what we have to work with when it comes to cutting things from our budget, which directly affects our kids. Over the last 4 years, you've heard state reps and say that they're going to eliminate property taxes, they're going to do something about this pension, and they say what they need to get elected, and we're left holding the bag, and we're always worried about that 19%. And that comes into where we have to worry more about what our pocketbook does, and we can't wait for the state to, well, they're giving us 19%, 20%. We're at $100 million. And where I'm going with this is our initial look at the project over at Worcester, Center Square Golf Course. Did your numbers, what numbers you came up with, was that just a property tax? Was that anything with earned income tax, or was that solely property tax as far as the evaluation?
Property tax, just property tax.
And that was in the amount of $2.4 million?
Correct. That was just based on an estimated value of each of the completed properties on the site.
Okay, so with that being said, that's 2.4% of our budget. And that's where we could start making a difference on our revenues, not waiting for the state whether or not a month, 2 months down the road, are they going to give us more money, less money? Let's try solving our problems here and hope that, yes, the new governor makes some changes that's favorable to us. 8% of our budget's salary and benefits. The pieces of the pie get very small, and the only thing we can work with is what affects the kids directly. So that's one of the things that we have to look at very hard with Lower Providence, Worcester, what's coming into our district, because we can greatly affect what our revenues are.
So I think, just to kind of get to the end of the point that I think you're trying to make, is that having Stuart looked at that, what the value of the proposal as proposed by the builder, it's your belief that the board ought to apply for standing in that case to express our support of the project to the Worcester supervisors.
Oh, I'm not there yet as far as whether to ask for standing, but it's very hard not to ask for it and to take a stance. But I think we have to, just as we're starting this communications process part of our board, we have to let people know that projects like this affect what our tax revenues are and how it affects their pocketbook. And this is something that does not bring kids into our district, but it brings money in. And I don't know if that number, the $300,000 number, is a conservative number. And that's the only way we can find that out is from the developer or the applicant to find out what type of structure, what kind of marketing, and what the final price is going to be around, and also the demographics of the people that will be moving in there. 55 and older, they're still working. So we still have earned income tax from those people.
So I think the administration fulfilled the initial ask, which was to go and do a calculation. So the way I take it is that you want to go reach out to the builder and get more information from him before we make any kind of determination.
I think it warrants that at least.
Anybody have any issue with that?
Is it our position really to reach out to the builder? I mean, I understand what Jim's saying, but I think it was maybe Herb mentioned last time, or Kathleen, that maybe the liaison should go that route and understand kind of what the role is, I guess, working with the townships versus the builder.
Well, I think we have to, that's what asking for standing is, right? And I'm not sure that, it's certainly not our place to tell the townships, either township, what to do. But I think what Jim had brought up before was we have a vested interest in encouraging these townships to do this kind of development because it helps us, helps everybody. So I guess the question is, do we want to get more information from the builder or not? Right.
What does the information from the builder give us? I mean, is it ultimately the township's decision on what's going to go?
It's absolutely the township's decision, so right? I think the question that's in front of us is, and it's a yes or no, and then if the answer is yes, then we have to go figure out what the next step is. Do we want to go and ask for standing in this, which would mean that we would go and say, basically, we would go and yes, we support that project, right? We have no legal authority. We have we can't take any action. And Frank, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but essentially it's just us saying, it's just us going and saying we support it. I do think Jim's got a point. We shouldn't do that lightly. We should understand what the full impact is before we do anything. But also, I think this is a little bit of uncharted territory for the board. So if the board's not comfortable, we should know that too. But I certainly don't have an issue with asking the builder for more information on what he's proposing that we can look at and make a decision later. But whatever the will of the board.
Chris, if I may.
Please.
The issue doesn't necessarily have to be one of requesting standing. We talked about that the last time, and in order to make the board a party, or the school district a party to the application, you would have to ask for standing to do that. It may very well be, as you know, when you get down to the end of these hearings, a lot of times they ask if there's any member of the public who would like to comment in the hearing. We may want to write to the board, providing a copy of that correspondence to the parties to the matter, and indicate that we have an interest in properties that don't send children to school, but do send tax money to the coffers, and craft that letter in such a way as to make your position known, and indicate in that letter that you don't comment with respect to the specifics of the project, because that obviously is within the purview of the board. If you wanted to do something like that, you could get your point out there that we are concerned about the revenue-producing aspects of some of these projects. I know the applicant's counsel in this case is a very able attorney, and I've handled many of these cases over the years, and what I normally do is call an expert, and I'm sure he'll do the same thing, that will be able to get up there and show what the economic value is of that conditional use to both the township and to the school district. They may be doing something like that. This would essentially bolster that type of an argument. If you wanted to look at it from that perspective, the board could entertain that as well. Or maybe you wouldn't do both. You would do one or the other. Or nothing, as the case may be.
But to our knowledge, they haven't reached out to us, or we don't know of anything that they're doing at this point where they're presenting the economic benefits.
No, I don't have any information on that one way or the other. No.
Okay. What's your pleasure, folks?
Well, just a comment back when we were talking about goals, you had indicated economic development as being one of the areas that we should explore to broaden our tax base. And perhaps that's more the approach that we should be taking, is an economic development conversation with the townships, as opposed to picking a particular project. I'm afraid I don't know enough about what Worcester's desires are as a township, the residents or whatever, and we may put ourselves in a difficult position if we pick on one thing. Are we trying to make Worcester an old folks place, maybe? I mean, might that be a perspective that people might see? Because there are several projects in Worcester already. I mean, I think that there's opportunity for problem here if we are picking on one particular project.
One of the things, I wouldn't say that we're picking on any one particular project. I look at this as we're worried about the revenues. The township, they owe it to their residents to make it affordable to live in their community. And they have to plan their zoning to allow for different things, because you have to think of what your growth is, what your services are going to be, what your tax base is going to be. And all too often, the township comes and says, well, we just keep raising taxes. But what have they done to offset our tax problems? You know, it's a thing called tax ratables. Tax ratable is something that you build that brings tax dollars in that doesn't cost you anything. In other words, it doesn't cost anything to the school district because there's no kids. This is a great tax revenue which has a low impact versus residential versus industrial, or residential versus a pig farm. This is pretty low impact and you're getting a lot of tax benefit from it. So I'm leaving that up to the township on what they want to do and how they want to make it look. But I also want to point out that they had an opportunity to offset some of the tax burden that's on the residents. Right now, the only cash cow in Worcester is the residents. And they just we keep pulling from that till. We just keep pulling the money from the residents there, but what's the township doing to help the residents out? And all I'm saying is, when we're dealing with our budget problems and we're at $1/10 billion and we have to cut programs from the kids because the state's not going to give us our 19% and our salary and benefits keep increasing, what are we going to do? We just going to keep raising taxes, or are we going to sit there and ask the township, look at this closely for the tax benefit for the residents?
How about this, in order to move this along, to your point, why don't I give the chairman a call and just see if there are ways that we can work together and see what the response is, and then we can kind of take that back and then figure out what our next steps are from there.
Are you talking about the supervisor? The chairman and
Yeah.
supervisor? I wouldn't do that within this context. And the reason that I say that is, remember, this conditional use, just the same as our conditional use, is a quasi-judicial process. And you don't pick up the phone and call the judge.
Well, I don't mean about this conditional use. I just mean in general, how might we work together to help encourage economic development to the extent they want to do that. I can certainly work with you to figure out how to have a conversation. I'm not saying call up and say, hey, we want this project to go, because we haven't made any kind of decision to support that. But at least have a conversation and see what their thoughts are on working together and things like this.
May I make a suggestion on this? In light of the fact that with our current position and our current cases with the Worcester Township, that we table this discussion until January, I think it'd be prudent for us to look into this a little bit further. But given all the things that are going on and all the stuff that's already been said and in the public, I firmly believe that we should not do anything about this until January.
Or at least December 18th?
Well, that was going to bring me to my last old business, was the 17th, they have their meeting. Now, is that where people with outstanding can make public comment before they make their decision, or do they make their decision before the 17th and they just let us know what it is?
Yeah, I really don't know how they're going to conduct their meeting. There are some.
They said there would be no comment.
Take public comment from anyone who is either a resident or taxpayer, similar to a sunshine law qualification. There are others that believe that the public comment section should be limited to people who have party standing. So I'm not sure exactly how we'll
get an answer on that. When do they decide?
probably the night that they take their comments.
Okay, yeah, I think that, Herbie, your point's well taken. Yeah, let's kind of hold on this until we get through that piece, which is important to us, and then we can figure out how the best way to have a conversation, generally.
Can I make one last comment on that topic? I think right at the moment, my reluctance comes from us looking at this in a one-dimensional sort of way, and that is the potential revenue that may be generated. But I think if you look at the totality of that project, that could impact some of our constituents as parents and guardians of students who have to travel from that part of the school district, already traveling an hour. You put another however many units in there, 500 units, it could seriously impact our ability to bus our kids. I don't want to look at this just from a one-dimension standpoint.
Well taken. It's a point well taken. Okay. Any other old business? Any new business? Okay. Courtesy of the floor.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have one piece of old business, just to thank the Arcola staff, food service, for the wonderful Thanksgiving buffet for the seniors. That was a great day, and we followed up our meal with a presentation from Mr. Williams in the planetarium. And prior to our meal, we had heard from the string ensemble and the select chorus. So it was certainly a very nice event.
Yeah, it looked like you had a lot of fun. Those pictures look great. Okay. Courtesy of the floor. Candy. You have new business? Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to thank all the teachers and make this a public statement for the recent Celebration of the Arts that was held back in November. For those of you who could have attended to this event, it was tremendous turnout. I would say we doubled the turnout of what we did last year, and I can't wait till next year. And per Tracy Bugash, who's one of the coordinators of this, is a Skyview band teacher, we raised $2,348 towards the Arts and Music Scholarship Funds, and that's almost double of what we did last year. So I want to commend the staff of the district, the administration, and the professional staff for a job well done and a wonderful evening. And I strongly encourage everybody to come out next year. Thank you.
Mr. Roth, you did a good job too. You were in the percussion section in one of those events, so you should give yourself a pat on the back as well.
More cowbell?
No, battery percussion, man.
Any further new business? All right, courtesy of the floor. Candy, go ahead.
Candy Alawat, Eagleville. I would like to address Jim's concern about the school district getting involved in development in Lower Providence. I don't think that's a good idea. It will look like you're leaning on them, and as far as what Lower Providence has done for its residents, and I've been a resident longer than I care to remember. They've done a lot for the residents. They've not raised taxes. This will be the first time in 11 years. And a lot of people are upset about that because they're going to see a tax increase in the school district. Worcester, what they've done for Worcester, they've done a really good job keeping it rural and not bringing any businesses in. That will affect your tax base in Worcester because it affects your residents. And November, there was 4 sheriff's sales in the Times Herald. 3 were in Worcester. So it's starting to catch up to us. And we have a lot of empty homes in Lower Providence that should be filled. Kim's comment about busing them, that's an expense because my daughter had a friend that lived all the way at North Whale Roads and Skipback Pike. That was a hike to ride to the high school in the morning. And I always felt bad for her. My son's girlfriend had the same problem being on Bechtel and Mars Road. She rode for an hour before she came to school in the morning. She was exhausted before she got here. So I think they're all things to consider, but I think you better tread real carefully trying to get involved in Lower Providence's developing homes. They might not take it. You got to test the waters to see how receptive they'll be. But I think it's kind of a wait to see thing to see what they're going to move forward in the new year with it. But I have a question about your new outlook for the board. Very ambitious. But my first question is, how many other school districts in Montgomery County meet once a month? I mean, I was looking at the definition of what a work session was, which things are brought, it's to be discussed, what's on the agenda, and any questions from the public. Are you going to tape the committee meetings? Because, I mean, I know that each committee, they meet different times, like the property committee meetings at 7:30 in the morning at Farina. It's like pulling teeth to get up to Farina at 7:30 in the morning. Policy was at 9. So your meetings are all over the place, where I've seen a number of school districts in the area when they put their schedule in of all their committees. One committee, like finance, will meet the first Monday of the month at 7 o'clock. It's open to the public. And some school districts, I think, do videotape their finance committee meetings. I think that's something they want the public, because I know, and they have them at night so the public can attend, because we know there's a lot of parents in this school district that do work, can't be here during the day, or they have small children, can't be here during the day. 7:30 in the morning, I can personally say, is a little tough for me to get to a property committee meeting, outside of the traffic issue alone, to get near the high school at that time. But I don't understand why you're dropping a meeting. I mean, I understand your calendar, and I understand what Kathy said about a few of us being upset that the calendars were changed. That's because over the years, you vote for a calendar at the beginning of the year. This past summer, you changed the calendar and didn't vote on it. And, I mean, I'm not going to apologize, but I consider you elected officials. You represent the public, and if you're supposed to meet twice a month to do the business of the district, that's what we should expect from our elected officials. I mean, I like your vision for the next 5 years. I think it's ambitious. It'll change a lot. I'm not afraid of change. It's scary sometimes. I really do wish you a lot of luck, and I hope it works out. Unfortunately, elected officials are fluid. Year to year, there's different people, so visions change. But I think you really should, I just don't understand why you dropped the work session, because all the committee reports, if you're not at the committee meeting, you miss a lot of information that won't be discussed at a school board meeting. And I think that's a disservice to the public, especially when it comes to property and especially finance. I consider that the most important committee in the school district, and that the public should know what's being said in the committees. So I think that you need to explain that. And again, I mean, I'll have to give the school district my email. They've had it since my son was in kindergarten. But, I mean, I think you ought to reconsider answering our question. If you don't answer it at this meeting, maybe on the 18th. 18th isn't a solid date. That's a temporary date.
It's the basis for the calendar that Dr. Zerbe will finalize, and and we'll publish.
So you'll know more towards the 18th whether you're going to have a special meeting?
December 18th, yes.
December 18th, yeah.
It's all going to depend on how many bids come in and how long it takes the property committee and the administration to review and prepare a recommendation for the board.
And does that also include the continuous use decision? If they make it, are we sure if they're going to make a decision on the 17th? I mean, I haven't...
You have to ask them.
No, that's quite all right. I'd rather wait for them. I thought by now they would have rendered a decision. Wasn't too sure, but I want to wish everybody, and I'm going out on a limb here, a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And a very Happy New Year if I don't see you. And I do wish you a lot of luck on your changes to the board, but I still think you should keep the two. That's imperative for the public. Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Joe Bickelman, Audubon. I'd just like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to shake that young man's hand that got the 2,400 in the SAT. That was really impressive, and the teachers have a lot to be proud of, and the board, I'm sure you're very proud too. I'd like to also commend your outlook for the new board procedures. It was nice to see that there's an HR committee now. Since salaries and benefits are 70% of the budget, it'd be nice to see things like the early retirement incentive plan discussed at an HR committee meeting, benefits discussed at an HR committee meeting. Maybe some components of the contracts that we have no control over can be discussed at those meetings, just in generality, not specific employees or anything like that where you'd have to break into executive session, but items such as the Bucksmont medical self-insurance plan that the district participates in. It'll be nice to sit in on those meetings at the HR committee meetings. I think that's a good idea. As far as asking questions at the board meetings, if we just ask a simple question or a question that we need clarification, this means that we're not going to get an answer as we stand here at the podium? Or are you going to email me on my phone right now if I ask a question?
What's your email?
No, I mean, it's just,
look,
it just doesn't look
I think
great.
a simple question that we can answer,
right?
But a lot of questions that come up are not simple questions, and people need to look into them. I mean, that's fair,
right? Right. Yeah, something that you need to look into, sure, but something that somebody should know. I would expect an answer, I guess. The other thing I want to just make the board aware of, and my wife isn't aware that I was going to say this, but the 120 drivers were terminated from the district, and besides losing their membership in the public school employees retirement system, paying anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 for their benefits for a lesser plan, just to let you know, First Student, when my wife does her run, she makes us like $25 an hour or something like that, but when she comes back to the lot and fuels now, she gets dropped down to an $11.75 rate. So, all the employees that come back to the lot and take 5 minutes to clean out their bus, they drop down like $15 an hour for the 5 minutes it takes to clean out their bus. And also with the computerized system that they have at First Student, and it's a way First Students in improving their profit margins. I can see that as from a corporate standpoint. The computerized system, they're in their bus, they swipe in on their bus, and they swipe out on the bus. So there's no more time, they get paid to the minute, exactly to the minute. And just this past 2 weeks, they run an audit where they shaved everybody down. They shaved their runs down. So if you were making 38 hours a week, hey, you're going to make 36 because we found these spots in your run. And it's all due to, them looking for their profits. So I just want to make the board aware of that's what's happening. Okay? Yep.
Go ahead, John.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. I'm kind of discouraged by the time spent in this meeting room on several occasions on the issue of how can we push for that $2+ million from turning a golf course into senior housing. And that none of that discussion was about using that $2 million to cut the tax rate. It was all about more money coming in, we can spend more. Now, I have an article here from March of 2007 when the Times-Herald wasn't limiting their letters to the editors. An article from a CPA in Bluebell, and the article is entitled, "The Only Answer to School Tax Relief is to Cut Costs." And there's not many articles like that in the media, whether it's newspapers, magazines, Twitter, or whatever. But somehow you've got to address that 80% of your budget related to salary and benefits. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. It makes no sense that independent of enrollment that you need the same number of teachers, and enrollment has been going down. It's gone down over 500. It's going to go down another 600. Somewhere you need to address how low can the school student-teacher ratio go. On another subject that Mrs. Barone had touched on, there was a planning commission meeting recently in Lower Providence where a one-page ordinance was up for a vote. The ordinance dealt with signs at all Lower Providence and Methacton School District properties. And I think that ordinance was the result. Putting that ordinance out was something that was suggested in June. It showed up, I think, on the September bills list as a $15,000 bill from the Bartle firm. And initially at that Planning Commission meeting, the ordinance was unanimously rejected. It did get into signage. It was proposing electronic LED digital signing in a particular color. The sign size is somewhat reduced from what Dr. Quinn had proposed at Arcola, but a number of residents spoke up at that meeting with reference to a sign for the Skyview Arcola road coming off of Eagle Road, saying that that is totally an unsafe idea, an idea creating a hazard to have an electronic sign, particularly at that intersection. Later on in the meeting, the Planning Commission rethought things and voted on an ordinance to allow to legalize the sign across from Brother Paul's for the Lower Providence Township property only. Now this week I see in the Times-Herald an advertisement where the Board of Supervisors will vote on the original ordinance later this month. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of opposition, specifically with regard to the Skyview Arcola sign as being a hazard. It's not an easy place to put up a sign, and I think that it's worthy of some discussion by this board before the solicitor goes off and spends another big chunk of money and then submits a bill for payment. The other thing relative to your meetings, I seem to recall that in the school code that there's a requirement for 2 meetings a month, and I'm going to check that out. Not that I'm the only one that can do that, but I think we need to somehow comply with the school code independent of how many committee meetings are desirable or happen. And relative to a number of your meetings, whether it's committee or the entire board, I would encourage you to get agendas out well before exactly 24 hours before a meeting. In the Upper Merion School District, they put out preliminary agendas, and then when the final agenda is released to the board, it is instantly put on the district website, typically on a Friday for a Monday meeting. And I'd like to second Mrs. Alabar relative to the published minutes of the June meeting are still lacking the list of insurers. It does have the premiums, but even in the heading for that part of the meeting, it says list of insurers, and the list of insurers is missing. I think that is a total lack of transparency, and it needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional courtesy of the floor? Oh, Candy, come on. It's Christmas, good.
You're not going to see it until hopefully the end of January.
From your...
In reference to the Planning Commission meeting, I attended that meeting, and it was very disappointing that no one from the school district attended that meeting, since it was considered the sign that's been in contention for the last 2.5, 3 years. I have asked a number of times this board about the status of that sign. Dr. Quinn and Mr. Jacoby, who are both gone now, presented that. The township gave them every opportunity to redesign their sign. It did not meet the ordinance. Clearly, the school district could have worked with the township and compromised and put the sign in what they want. But if you would have been at that meeting after it was on the agenda, it was voted, it became a very contentious meeting. And it was very relaxed. Everybody just sitting in the room talking. And Planning Commission wasn't happy, and now it's going to go in front of the Board of Supervisors for consideration because it was said that Methacton wants to change the ordinance in Lower Providence. And my question is, Methacton School District should not be deciding the ordinances in our township. I live in the district that covers the township sign and the school district sign, if it's put in. They claim that I'm RD2, but they called Methacton a business. So the township sign, the reason for the problem with the school district is the township sign was illegal. And they found out apparently the township sign was put in before the ordinance. So it was the word they don't like to hear, grandfathered. I think there was a better way the school board could have handled this. I was a little put out because I have questioned the board in the last almost 3 years about the sign, the status, and the fact that Dr. Quinn didn't even try to compromise with the township. He filed a lawsuit. And I've asked the status of the lawsuit a number of times. That has cost the residents of Lower Providence taxpayer money, and they're also taxpayers in the Methacton School District. I think they're caught in the middle. We're caught in the middle. So I don't know why, instead of taking the hard way, you can't sit down and be nice, play nice, and work it out and compromise. And then they might work with you, but they didn't seem too pleased at that. But I couldn't get an answer why there was not a representative there from the school district. Someone should have been there if that was an item on the agenda.
Thank you. Any additional courtesy of the floor? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Brenda, is there a second? Herb, all those in favor? We stand